CNBC, mortgage rates fall sharply to under 7% after inflation eases. Mortgage rates fell sharply Thursday after a government report showed that inflation had cooled in October. The average rate on the 30-year fixed plunged 60 basis points from 7.22% to 6.62%, according to Mortgage News Daily. The rate, Pat, however, since you want to stick to the facts, is still more than double what it was at the start of this year, which was the very end of that historically low interest rate run. I talked to a lender this morning, okay? I know we were supposed to have Brian Fay, New England Home Mortgage, on today. I called him. He didn't pick up. He must be very busy locking people into rates. So I ended up talking to Brian Skelly of William Raveis Mortgage. And Skelly told me on the phone that just yesterday he locked somebody in the low 6% that just last week would have been locked in the low 7s. So that's a full point. That's a real big savings for that buyer who has a need to buy, who has a desire to buy a home. They just saved a boatload of money by timing the interest rate on the right day. Now, everybody's situation is different. I just read that according to Mortgage News Daily, the average rate on the 30-year fixed is 6.62. If you have really good credit and a really good, financial situation, low 6s are a possibility for you. Your personal situation has an impact on these average rates that you see online. So while you're seeing, and I just read from CNBC that the averages went from 7.25 to basically almost 6.5, it could be lower or higher depending on the personal situation. But inflation easing, the 10-year reacted with a sharp decline, and the mortgage rates always follow the 10-year. The mortgage rates followed, and we had basically a half-point reduction here.
Yeah, and I think it's the speed, right? That was the thing, because that was what got us in trouble early on, was when you watch 10-year rates rise. It wasn't necessarily the volume of the rise, it was the speed at which it did it. That was what we talked about when we had this. I mean, we were talking, I think, March and April about that sudden jump. Not that it was, it was huge, obviously, in the fact that it was, almost a full percentage point over the course of a week, which in a treasury is ridiculous. But the fact that it did it just that quickly, that's what I thought was really, really interesting watching to see, right? So we were expecting like a print somewhere in the 8s on Thursday. We got 7.7. So we were expecting 8.1. We get 7.7. That's 0.4. 7.7 is still atrocious for historical inflation rates. I mean, it's still more than double over the last 55 years, but sure, because we're trending in the right direction. And what's very interesting is because of how much the market dislikes the unknown and unpredictability, the fact that we don't know for sure that the Fed is going to change their stance in December when we have the FOMC meeting again. But the fact that this gives us the slightest inkling that they might not do 0.75 of a basis point, they might do a half, just that potential has gotten everyone very excited. We're still in a very tough economic place. 7.7% inflation is still an enormous number. But just that positive trend, just the indication that maybe what we've been done and maybe what we've been battling for the last 9 months is starting to pay off a little bit, is really what the market's reacting to. Nobody had baked in that number, right? You saw the market was fairly flat most of the week leading into, the back of this. And then we get the print 2 days ago on Thursday. And here we are. And that little glimmer of hope.
To your point about the speed, this drop matches the record drop at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
So it was a historically, if you will, fast drop. You don't see this kind of drop that often. I mean, it speaks to the times we're in. These are volatile times, right?
And the market's reaction was the fastest, highest day since the beginning of 2020 in response to, right? So it's just like, you're right. Everything is highs and lows. There's no kind of in between at this point.
So this swing just happens to be positive. When you look back on the last 3 years, you may be saying, well, if you missed the boat on 3% interest rates, how positive is it? But if you're one of those buyers that's in the market right now that has a need to move, that wants to identify a house before the holidays, who no matter what the rates are, is going to buy a house because it's that time of their life, it's meaningful for them, this is a big moment for those folks.